Welcome back to another episode of Born Again Bowhunting Podcast. On today's episode, we have Kaitlyn Maus.
Hello.
How's it going tonight, Kaitlyn?
How are you?
It's going good. I did some shed hunting today. Didn't find anything, but it was pretty good to get out. It's finally starting to warm up a little bit. So
it's amazing what kind of temperatures we've had in our area for, this time of year. It's been like in the 40s and 50s pretty consistently. It's very nice.
Yesterday was like 55. Today we got snowed on.
We got snow this morning, and tomorrow's supposed to be like
and then
70.
tomorrow's like 70. So it's like what's it look like in Iowa for you guys right now?
Well, so I'm actually in Missouri shed hunting, but
Okay.
I mean, Iowa, it's been pretty cold. It's kind of similar to you guys where it's like one day it'll be really nice and then the next it's like freezing cold again. But I'm in like central Missouri, so right now it's like 50s-ish, which is like super nice. So
I wonder if that's that warm front that we're getting.
Probably.
Yeah.
Because we're supposed to get a warm front tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's wild.
Alrighty, well, do you want to give a brief description about who you are, what you do, in case any of the listeners aren't familiar with?
If they've lived under a rock for the past 2 years,
Yeah.
or I should say longer than that. But
yeah, so my name's Kaitlyn Maus, and I am originally from Pennsylvania. I grew up deer hunting. My dad is a huge deer hunter, and so it's kind of how I got into it. But I moved away to Missouri actually for college, and I kind of just started hunting out there on public because I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any connections, and I've always kind of like filmed and liked photography. But I just started filming my hunts just for like memories and just because I really enjoy it and I like the challenge of it. So yeah, one thing led to another, and I just posted it on YouTube and social media, and people seem to enjoy watching. So it's kind of where I'm at.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Well, before we get into it, we got a couple icebreaker questions for you.
Okay.
So the first one, during hunting season or if you're on the road, what's your go-to drink? Energy drink, a coffee, fountain pop, whatever.
I really try to drink water just to keep myself hydrated because I'm really bad at it. But I for sure need energy, and I would say probably 5-hour energy is like my go-to because if I drink like too much liquids, then I just feel like I have to pee the whole time or I'm like full. So like I like the little shots of energy, so I don't have to like carry a big can of something around or whatever. But yeah, that's probably my go-to.
So the first time I tried a 5-hour energy, I think I was in like middle school for a basketball game. Dude, I almost puked. They are so it's just me at least.
It's an acquired taste.
Dude, I do not like them.
I will say the flavor for sure matters. So the ones that I get are like the Costco brand, so they're like the off brand, but like they have a peach mango and it is terrible. Like I feel sick the second I even smell it. But like they have like a berry and that one's pretty decent. But I try to just like ignore the flavor and just suck it up because they work for me. So
Note to self, try the berry next time.
Yeah, berry. Yep.
The second question is, what type of bow do you currently shoot?
I have a Matthews Prima. I've had it for 2 years now, I guess. So it's been a pretty good bow. I like it.
Yeah.
And you dabble a little bit in target, right? Are you shooting the 36 or the 34?
I have the TRX 34. I really haven't. I mean, like I've shot it maybe a handful of times so far. Just because like when I got it, it was like the end of summer going into deer like hunting season. I was just focused on other things. But this year I would really like to do some target stuff. I don't know how serious I'll get with it. But I really like it for the aspect of kind of like forcing myself to shoot every day and just kind of improve on just like being a better archer. So yeah, I would like to do more of that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then the final question is, if you're running any kind of game cameras, what's your favorite game camera currently?
I have a mixed bag. I use Taxicam, the reveals. I think whatever the X's are or whatever.
Yep.
I really like those. I've got a Bushnell that's pretty good, and even some of like the stealth cams I think have really good quality, but I have kind of experimented and I use a mixed bag. So
yeah,
nothing wrong with that.
No specific go-to.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, so on today's episode, we're going to be talking about your buck swoops.
Yes.
So I guess
Yeah. So
you want to,
yeah, I can start. I
yeah.
can start. Let me pull up my notes real quick. So like we're just gonna cover the history of the deer, any opportunities missed, etc. So just go through and maybe talk about a little bit of when you guys first found him. I think if I remember right, in your video you were talking about how you had a little bit of history with him the year before. And
Yes.
just kind of touch base on the hunt, and then we'll definitely bounce some questions back and forth.
So, well, I guess the biggest thing to start with is like this piece of property, with a lease. It's the first like real access that I've had to private land. Like I said, I kind of came out to Missouri and just did so much public stuff. So it was kind of a cool just learning experience just overall, because like it was the first time I had something that was like mine. Um, and there were a few other guys that were on the piece as well the first year. So it was kind of one of those like just learning obviously how to hunt the place because it was new to all of us, but also not stepping on each other's toes. And if someone had a good encounter with a certain buck, then it was kind of like, okay, well now you can specifically hunt that buck if you want to. So year one was the first year that I had knowledge of Swoops, and I for sure hunted him totally wrong, just because of all the variables and like everybody just trying to like be cautious and not just go in and blow all the deer out of the country basically. So I knew of him, and I was not in charge of trail cameras that year, and this is for sure my fault, but I thought he was showing up on a totally different camera than what he was showing up on. So I was basing my hunts off of like where I thought he was, and it was not where he was. So
So not to interrupt, but I watched your video again last night just to make sure that I wasn't, forgetting anything. But I
yeah.
I think in your video you mentioned something about that you because I've heard you say that before. And
Hmm.
when I was watching the video in my head, I thought, what is she talking about? Like she didn't know what camera, and I thought, well, maybe like,
Yeah.
there was multiple cameras real close together. So I'm glad that you explained, what was going
Yeah.
on, because I was a little bit confused on what was happening, but it
Yeah. So we
makes
had
sense
some
now.
Yeah.
some cell cams out, okay,
Gotcha.
and they weren't mine. So they were one of the other guys that was on the lease, and that was just more of like a mix up in communication because I didn't have access to like his login. So he would just like send photos like
Gotcha.
in our group chat, like, hey,
Gotcha.
this buck showed up today or whatever. But I guess I just never like put two and two together of like, okay, which camera is that?
Yeah.
So
Maybe he was
um
telling her, hey,
Yeah.
this buck's over here, and he really
yeah,
is.
yeah, maybe he's trying to throw me one. But
Uh,
anyway, I don't know. It didn't work out. But really it was interesting because he was a clean 8, like just a very typical 8. Really nice 8, like really good scoring 8, but just pretty standard other than the fact that his main beams like curled and like
yep.
Hmm.
swooped up,
Yep.
which is why we gave him that name. And I really honestly, like I didn't specifically just hunt him, just because like I said that was the first year we had that piece, so it was like just trying to figure it out and just see, maybe there's another deer that we should
Yep.
hunt or something. So
Yep.
I didn't just focus on him. And then when I did, obviously I never saw him because I was hunting him wrong. So year one was just an experiment, I guess.
Hey,
So
I like the story. It's a funny story, and I like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It adds character to the whole story. I like it.
yeah,
Now,
but
I want to rewind real quick. This is in Iowa, correct?
yes,
Okay,
yes,
because I don't think that we mentioned that. So
No.
if you're listening, she's hunting in Iowa. So
correct,
yep.
yes. So then last year was our second year on it, and the two of the guys that were on the lease had they had other leases or moved away or whatever. So it was just Chris and I this past year. And I kind of claimed Swoops like in a way the year before because I'm like, I really want to hunt this deer because I think he's killable. Like once I realized that he was showing up on a different camera. So
Yeah.
I had known that like kind of at the end of the season, like tail end of the season. So I'm like, I think I can like focus on him. So I claimed him to an extent, I guess, to just sort of hunt where I thought he was going to end up being. And this year, which we didn't obviously plan on it, but he just blew up. Like he was no longer just a standard 8-point. He just had all these points and kickers and just inline points and just really, really massive, cool deer. So when we got our first like velvet photos of him, I didn't even realize it was him at first because he just looked nothing alike. And then I really started analyzing him, and I'm like, that's Swoops. Like, wow.
Yeah.
So
I was like, now I really want to hunt him.
yeah, and I'm really glad that you brought that up because I had that in the show notes. Was there anything that you guys did in order for that deer to make that big of a jump from the year prior?
I mean, no, not really. I mean, we put like corn out and stuff after season just to like get inventory photos, see who survived and stuff like that. But I mean, we really didn't do anything. I just truly think for him it was genetics, and honestly, like we have a bunch of like ag fields, and you know, like the food sources are there, and so I think it's just a matter of like really low stress because we didn't pressure him. You know, he was barely hunted, and just a combination of good genes and good food. So I think he blew up.
That's
Is
cool.
what it was.
And then also I wanted to ask, was there any possibility of like an injury? Because like his one side is really goofy.
Wild.
Yeah. So that I will say, at the end of the season, I noticed that his jaw was like swollen, and that's how I knew it was him even after he shed, because he had a really swollen jaw. And what's interesting is I don't know how old he is. My taxidermist is sending the teeth in, so I will find out. But
cool.
The first year when we had seen him as an 8-point, I thought he was maybe like 3 or 4, just based on his body size and just, you know, features.
Yep.
And then this year he looks like he could literally be like 5 or like 8. Like he just blew up, literally, like antlers blew up, his body. I didn't have a scale, but he was easily pushing 300 pounds, like just a huge deer.
Big old hoss.
He looks
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
So I don't know if injury had anything to do with that. I guess I don't know the science behind injuries and stuff, but I have heard obviously like it affects antler development. So I don't know. It could be for sure.
Whatever happened, it happened for the better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
And he was healthy. Like he was doing fine, you know. So whatever it was didn't affect him that
Yeah,
badly.
he looked real good on the hoof. Like in the videos and stuff, he looked real good on the hoof.
Yeah.
So he definitely wasn't showing any signs of injury or anything like that.
Right.
So. All right.
So before you encountered him when you shot him, did you have any other encounters with him this season actually?
So okay, so I shot him October 13th, and you know, obviously I had trail cameras out and stuff. So we had been watching him through Velvet, and then the beginning of the season I was traveling for other hunts, like opening week, I think it was. So Iowa comes in the 1st of October. So I think I was in Illinois or something. And he was like starting to sort of shift his pattern a little bit from like his summer routine, but it wasn't really until like that second week that he was starting to kind of get on like a routine of like he would hit, you know, this one scrape at roughly this time, and then he'd go and they'd be on the next camera, you know, 10 minutes later, and he was starting to consistently do that day after day. And I was like, I need to like capitalize now because he is like on a pattern. So my very first sit, I only had trail camera stuff to go off of, so I really didn't quite know. I knew he was at point A and point B, but I didn't know how he was getting there. So my first sit was just strictly observation sit. Like I sat way up on the hill just to make sure I wasn't going to blow him out or anything. And sure enough, he did exactly what I thought he was going to do. And so I'm like, okay, I think I can kill him if he does that same exact thing. So, yeah, I mean, I really, honestly, I think I sat for him 3 sits, and then I killed him on the 3rd sit. So I really didn't have a lot of like personal history with him. Just because I was like, this is like the deer of a lifetime for me. I can't be in there screwing around. Like I need to be very particular about my sits, when I'm in there, why I'm in there, you know? So I really didn't sit very long, but it was really cool that it came together.
Yeah.
You know, I've noticed, and sorry to cut you off, Kev, but I've noticed that like 3, like the number 3 in hunting is very, very important in my mind. Like,
Yeah.
it's always the third time. It's always like your third opportunity. And at least in my opinion. I mean, I don't know if anybody else can relate, but it's almost a trend. Like, I've always capitalized on my third opportunity at a shooter because I always
Yeah.
mess up the first two. And it's like you learn so much from those first two opportunities. You blow them out of the water, and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, the third time I'm ready. And like, yeah, it's kind of interesting that happened. Sorry, I just find that cool.
Yeah, it was cool. And I also kind of would agree, like anywhere from like 3 to 5, I feel like is like the sweet spot, because there's some deer on public that I've like, I'll see them and I'll scout and I'll find them, and then it's like it seems like the 3 to 5th sit, it's like somewhere in there is like when I get that opportunity.
Yep.
And I don't know if it's just simply the way I go about doing it or what, but I have noticed that too. It's like interesting. But yeah, I mean, anything past that, I feel like they start to be like, okay, something's up, and then they're on to you.
Yeah, they start to
Exactly.
almost pattern you at that point.
Exactly.
Yes.
If you don't kill them within, like Kaitlyn said, I agree 100%. If you don't kill them within like 5 sits, goodbye.
Yeah.
Goodbye, because it's like they know.
Yeah.
They're not dumb,
Nope.
Whitetails are crazy intelligent, especially a
Yes.
mature buck. So,
Yes.
I kind of want to touch base on what you were just talking about. Was there ever a light bulb moment that went off for you? You said you did an observation sit, you've seen him come out where you wanted him to, but was there ever a time in the process of hunting him where a light bulb went off and you're like, I have to sit here, or like he's doing this because of this, or something where you can kind of get into a little bit more detail?
I mean, honestly, that observation sit was kind of my light bulb moment, because like I had said, I knew he was hitting certain cameras, and like he was well into daylight. Like he would come out an hour before dark, 30 minutes before dark, whatever it was.
You felt very
And so
comfortable.
very
Yeah.
comfortable. And I for sure wanted to keep it that way. I didn't want him to know that I was hunting him. So I was like, I really got to be careful when I go in there. And all I had were a few cameras, but we had set them up over like mock scrapes and stuff. And so like he was just coming in, kind of doing his routine and checking those scrapes. And so my observation sit was like, okay, I just need to figure out how he's getting from point A to point B. I know he's there, but I just need to figure out where I need to sit. So when I saw what he did, it was kind of one of those like, okay, like that makes sense. I get it. He's gonna probably do that same thing. I paid attention to the wind and everything, just all the environmental factors, and I was like, okay, so this is what he's doing, and I'm gonna go sit right there. So I think that was just probably my one light bulb moment, because I really had only sat for him 3 sits, so it was like I didn't have a whole lot of time to sit there and watch. But
yeah. And I think you made a great point for anybody that's listening that maybe is a little bit less experienced, or wanting to learn. I think sometimes people get too involved with like making a decision. And I personally feel like sometimes I do this where I like overanalyze everything. Kaitlyn literally just says, I seen him do X, Y, and Z, and I capitalized on it, which, like a lot of guys wouldn't do that.
Yeah, they would take 4 days to sit and watch.
Yeah, and it's
when
like
they could have been in there on that second or third day, like she did, and capitalized.
Yep. Like I mean, that's the thing. Like, don't overanalyze stuff, and don't like a lot of guys are like, well, that doesn't make sense because it's not to the book. Like a whitetail shouldn't do that because of X, Y, and Z. It doesn't matter why he's doing it. Like he's doing it. Go capitalize on it.
Yeah.
And you're
I
only
like
gonna
that.
have.
You go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think people get hung up on like they're just like assuming, oh, a deer is gonna do this, but it's like not necessarily. Like every deer has its own like characteristics and personality and like what they like to do, and obviously how they have survived their whole life. So it's like if you can pinpoint exactly what that specific deer wants and does, then that's like that means more than just like, oh, I just know how to deer hunt and like they're gonna do this. But it's like they might not do that, or they might do something totally off the wall that you're like, oh, I would never expect them to do that. Like him being a mature buck, I would never expect him to be out an hour before dark, like that just seems strange. But I was like, this is the week he's moving in daylight, this is the week I need to kill him, so it's kind of just how I looked at it.
And that's why I brought that point up, because she mentioned that he was daylight and, an hour before dark or whatever. And it's like some guys would be like, oh man, I can't go in there because like, X, Y, and Z, they'll make excuses. And it's like, no, Kaitlyn went in there and killed him because that's what he was doing, you know?
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
I was gonna say too, like he was daylighting like that couple days there, and like his pattern could totally shift.
Yep.
The front could come in and have a
Pressure.
totally
Yes.
different
Yeah.
wind or something like that. I mean,
Yes,
when he's doing what you want him to do, that's when you got to go in there
Go in
and
there.
make a move for sure.
for sure.
You can't
Yep.
be at work, Kevin.
I know.
You can't be at work.
Have to get a
I know.
doctor's note next year.
Yeah. I mean, and it can be tough too. Like, and like I said, I've hunted a lot of public, and it's like sometimes I want to do something, and then I'll go in and make the move, and somebody else is sitting there or whatever, and it's just like there are other factors for sure. But I mean, I hunted it was just Chris and I on this piece, so I for sure had that in my favor, which definitely helped. But he's still a mature deer, and he's gonna do what he wants to do. So I was like,
yeah.
I need to make it happen when I can. So
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
yeah.
Cool. So, I had a couple other notes, but I think that you've answered most of them, or at least covered most of them that I had. But is there any is there something that you would do differently, knowing what you know now? I know that you said it was a newer property, or was there ever, after harvesting the buck, was there ever a moment where you're like, okay, next year this is what I'm doing, or did you learn anything from harvesting him?
Yes, I would say the biggest thing is probably just to definitely make sure that my sits have meaning. I feel like everybody's like, "Oh, you can't kill them from the couch," but it's like at the same time, like yes, that is true, but at the same time, like if you're just going in there with no purpose, there's a good chance you're going to screw up your hunt before it even starts. And so just simply just watching him, I was like, okay, like, because truthfully, the observation sit that I had when I was initially going to hunt him, I was going to sit like right where he was coming out. And that's exactly like where my wind was blowing. And so he would have busted out before I even saw him. So I was like, I'm really glad I didn't do that. And I stayed very, passive.
Yep.
Just because I wanted to make sure. And so I would say for sure, you got to have some sort of strategy, some sort of plan. Now, if you're going in after a deer or like if you're going in just, maybe a random piece you've never hunted before and just hoping there's a buck in there, yeah, you don't necessarily know how to strategize for that. But, when you have a target buck, I for sure would say like, I'm going to be very particular about my sits.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
You got to be kind of cautious too to start with until you like know how he's patterned and stuff like that.
Yes, for sure.
Yep. I agree with that. Like new farm, like, or I should say fairly new, like you're still figuring it out. And a lot of
Oh
guys,
yeah.
a lot of guys are screaming this like pressure, 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 aggressive, aggressive, aggressive. But sometimes there is like it works out to be a little bit on the more patient side. I feel like the fad now is like, mobile hunting, get deep on bedding, do this, do that. There's opportunity
Yeah.
for that. Like I agree, like I'm very aggressive, but I also know when to not be aggressive.
Yeah.
And it's like sometimes you just got to sit back and like whatever the deer are doing, like you got to learn from that, And I
Yes.
think that's a good point. So I like that. Anything you guys before we move on, anything that you guys have?
Not really.
Well, and especially if you got a private piece or a lease or something like that where you can be a little bit more timid and just kind of laid back a little bit, that's the time to do it.
Yes.
Now on public, you kind of have to be more aggressive because like what you said, as far as, the wind's right, the conditions right, you get in there, somebody else is already there. You have
Right.
no,
Yep.
you have no kind of control over that. So there you might have to be a little bit more aggressive, but on a private thing,
Yep.
take your time a little
But
bit.
I would almost disagree with that in a way because like if you go into a new public piece, you gotta like scout from the outside in, right? Like you
Yeah.
can't just dive in the middle.
Right.
Like I mean, I don't know. I mean, we could go into a big can of worms on this discussion, but maybe we'll just move. Maybe we'll just move on. All right. So,
Yeah, scouting's a big thing for sure.
yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So, any other deer that you were targeting on that farm? Because I was a 2-buck state, right?
Yes. So yes and no. We Well, I mean, we didn't have the piece at the time, but I think in like 2019, I was hearing a lot of people say that EHD had hit. And I would agree with that simply because I noticed it with a lot of the age structure of bucks that we have on the piece. We have a lot of bucks, but a lot of them are very young. It seemed like a lot had died off. And so literally like this past year was the first that I would say we had any kind of mature bucks. And going into next year, I think we'll have a lot of like 4 and 5 year olds and older, where in the past it was just like 2 and 3. So it was like I really wasn't trying to hunt any of those deer just because like why should I,
Yep.
I'm not that desperate for one. So there was one that was like a really old, like 7-point, we call them thumbs because his brow tines kind of like curl in. They look like thumbs. So I would have shot him in gun season, but I never ended up having an opportunity. So I kind of was just like, I don't need to fill the second tag this year. I'm more than happy with just swoops, but
Yeah.
I think next year will be really, really good. So
you got some potential for next year.
Yeah, I
though.
need to wait and see if any of them make a jump like Swoops did. That's what
Yeah.
you
I
need
know.
to
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for Velvet.
That's
Can't
awesome.
wait.
That's awesome. So, anything else that you want to mention about swoops before we dive into something else? Is there anything else that
I want to hear. So, like, what did he score again?
that was what I was going to say for the end,
Yeah.
but that's okay.
I want to know now. We're
Yeah.
too into it.
Yeah, 167 and like 7/8. So
That's a solid dude. That's awesome.
Stud.
yeah, and honestly, like for everything that he had going, his like weakest part was like his tine length. Like
Yep.
if he would have had like, I mean, even just like 2 more inches on either side, I mean, freaking giant.
How did you score
Not that he's not, but like.
How did you score the droopy point on the one side? Do you know?
So it actually it's funny because he has the same like little it's kind of an inline point on the other side as well. So technically they were like symmetrical. He just happened to like bend it over. It wasn't like fully broken or anything. He just bent it in velvet. So it was just, I mean, I scored it normal. I just had to like kind of curve around it. But
she got all of it. That's what I would have
yeah,
done.
I mean, yeah,
scored every
kinda.
inch. Yeah, I'd have done the same thing.
It was only like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 inches, but I mean,
Hey,
whatever,
that 2
I'll
or
take
3
it.
inches matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That matters.
Man,
That's awesome.
that is awesome. That deer's a tank.
Yeah. No, congratulations again. Like
Thank you.
that was a stud.
Yeah.
And I love the character. I'm
Oh.
all about character deer, man.
You got them
Yes.
splits.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes, very cool. I obviously you saw my video, so I cried because I was just like, I can't believe I just did that. Couldn't believe it.
Do you think of something?
Yeah, I just thought of something. So in your video, you got not a lot of penetration. Do you want to talk about like what you hit or like what, like go through that a little bit, and then let's talk about the recovery, because I feel like we forgot about that. You waited because of the penetration, correct?
Yes.
Yes and no.
So I initially, okay, so I had 3 minutes left of legal light when I shot him, so it was very dark.
Yep.
And I had a lighted knock, so I saw my arrow hit, and I mean, like I heard the thud, and I was like, okay. He takes off, and then suddenly I see it fly back out of him. Like I see the lighted knock just go flying, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just hit his shoulder.
Yep.
And then I was like depressed. I'm like, I can't believe I just screwed up on this. And then he runs off, and he runs, I don't know, maybe within like 80-ish yards of where like I could hear him, and I could hear coughing. And I've never heard a deer cough, so I'm like, I don't know if that's a really good sign or a really bad sign. I was leaning towards the good, but I'm like, man, I just don't know where I hit. And like then I obviously my brain starts going in a million directions, and I'm like, oh gosh, now what? So when in doubt, back out. So I was like, I'm not gonna push it. I cannot on this deer. So I go up, I grab the arrow just to see, and it was snapped in half. And so I had about like maybe 8 inches of arrow that was
That's
like
all you need.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
Yes. But I wasn't sure where I hit. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like I just don't want to risk it. So you just never know. So then when I did find him, it turns out it was a perfect double lung. I think genuinely because he was such a fat deer, like 300 pounds or almost, that I just like, it just hit all this like fat, and it slowed my arrow down, which, I only pull like 47 pounds. I don't have a lot of weight behind my arrow to really, do, get in. So I ended up hitting, I don't think I hit any shoulder, but I think it was just the fact that he was so fat. When I found him, I could feel my broad head like poking through the skin on the other side. It just didn't really pass through.
Cool.
So
Gotcha.
it did get the penetration. I just didn't think I did. So it was like, it was so nerve-wracking. But I mean, yeah, perfect shot, honestly. So,
and to be honest, like I was going to ask that kind of like what your poundage was, if you were comfortable talking about it and kind of your setup, because I mean, there are a lot of like, ladies out there, like maybe some younger guys that, are 50 pounds ish. And it just goes to show, like, when you got a mature buck that big,
yes,
you're probably not going to get a pass through, especially with, how big he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, that's kind of cool. At least, I mean, you did 47 pounds was good enough, like you killed him. So,
yeah. And I mean, when I first started hunting, I pulled 40 pounds. Now I never shot a deer that was that massive, but, I get pass throughs. That was the first deer that I had not ever had a pass through
really?
on. So
Okay, cool.
I can do it. It's just, I think genuinely he was just that big of a deer.
Yeah.
So, and it obviously helps if you hit them right too. So
yeah. And I guess I wasn't going that direction. I was just talking like a mature buck. It just goes to show how tough they are. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like I hit one. I'm shooting 70 pounds. A lot of arrow weight, like all that nonsense. And I had one bounce off its shoulder. So like, in my opinion, like I really don't think that like the poundage matters. I think it's more like your broadhead and like your tune of your bow and like stuff like that. Shot placement. Yeah. So I mean, Indians were killing deer with stick bows that were probably 20 pounds.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't matter. But that's cool.
Yeah, I think there's just like a happy medium, and everybody's. I could kind of semi go down a rabbit hole with this, but I'll just say like everyone's setup should be different. Like it's like I feel like everybody gets stuck on like, oh, this guy's shooting heavy arrows, I need to shoot heavy arrows, and it's like, well, are you shooting the same bow, the same poundage, the same draw length? Like if all that's the same, then yeah, maybe you should be, but maybe you shouldn't be, because like you might not get the penetration that you want, even if you think, oh, I got this heavy arrow, it's gonna work. At that point, you're just lobbing a rock at it, So it's like you gotta find like that sweet spot, and it's kind of, I'm sure, difficult for some people to know, what works and what doesn't. And I think that's also why I really am trying to get into like the target archery side, because all of that matters, and like people that are in target archery really break all that down. So like, I mean, like specs and everything is just so crazy. So I wanted to learn all that just to be a better archer, just overall. Because, when you are shooting an animal like that, you don't want stuff to go wrong, so.
Just out of my own curiosity, do you know the weight of your arrow by chance when you shot that buck?
I did. I want to say like 385 grains.
Okay. I was thinking around 400. That sounds about right.
I think 385 is where, like, right around there.
Gotcha. Because your draw length is probably what, like
25.
25, yeah. So that would make sense. A 400 grain arrow at 25-inch draw. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a sweet spot.
That's a good setup. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I've had a pass through on every deer except for Swoops. So
it just shows how big that sucker was. Yeah.
But man, in the pictures, you can tell that is just
she shot a
hog of a tank.
She shot a steer out there, man. Like
even his face, it's like he looks like a chunky boy. Like he's just like
he's a chunk.
He looks like a pig nose and like just a fat boy.
Oh, that's funny.
That's awesome.
All right, so now I think I've got all my notes covered on Swoops. Is there anything else that you can think of that you'd like to cover on Swoops? And then if not, I'd like to touch base on an out-of-state hunt, because I know you do a lot of traveling. Was there an out-of-state hunt that it was your favorite this year?
I mean, I really love Missouri. It's kind of just, it's home away from home for me. It's like I've hunted out here for, oh gosh, probably 6 years now. And I ended up shooting a buck that was the opposite of Swoops. I think he ended up being a yearling. I thought he was 2 when I shot him, but when I started dragging him, I'm like, this thing is tiny. But that was not necessarily on purpose, but I'm also the kind of person, like I hunt what I can for the area. So I had an opportunity at like probably a 3-year-old. It was really nice. And I was at full draw, and he stepped behind a tree, and it was like marginal with my wind. It was like just kind of going that way, like teetering, and I'm like, he's gonna bust me. And I'm just like holding, and he's just still standing there, and then he just got my wind and spins out. And I'm like, dang it, like that sucks. So didn't get him, but I really like Missouri. It's just a place that I've gone for so long. It's kind of like my little home away from home, and I like it a lot.
Yeah,
so
that's cool. Now, is that public, or do you have a private piece that you hunt in Missouri?
No, it's public. Yeah.
Cool.
Iowa's literally the only place that I have any private. So I mean, like occasionally I'll go with like a friend or something on their property in another state, but for the most part, I do public stuff. So
sweet.
That can be a grind too.
Oh, we all know it.
Yeah.
Especially anymore the fad. I feel like hunting public stuff.
Love those dudes to death.
No, I didn't mean the hunting public. I meant just hunting public land.
Well, I meant the hunting public.
Yeah.
I love the dudes to death, but man, they really like they're so popular that like everybody else wants to do it. And it's just like makes it hard for everybody else that like, was doing it before. But but it's public land,
I feel like it's like a kind of everything coming together right now with all that, because it's like we had COVID, so everybody was off of work. They just had the time. So everybody's like, oh, I'm going to try public land because that's the cool thing to do. And so like, it seemed like everybody was in the woods those like first 2 years. I think this past year I noticed it was like finally relaxing a little bit. I think once people realized that it's not as easy as these people make it look, then it's like, they're like, okay, maybe I don't need to do this, which whatever, it's cool. Like I'm fine with it, but I for sure have noticed like the last couple of years there's been a pretty big uptick in people in the woods.
Do you really think it's going on the downhill? Like, do you think it's becoming less popular?
I wouldn't say less popular. I guess just the places that I have been, like there's years that I'd go out and I'd never run into anybody, and even just like the Missouri piece that I kind of have to myself, the last couple of years I've noticed that people are starting to move in. And I would also say like with like map apps like Onyx and stuff like becoming more popular, I think people are just realizing that they have more options than maybe what they used to think that they had. There's public down the road for me, I never knew that, or whatever. So it's like they can access these places that they might not have thought of before. So I don't know. I think it's a trend right now, but
I hope it
2 or 3 years. 2 to 3 years.
that
I think it's gonna start going way back down.
You think that's what you're calling?
Because I think people are gonna realize that it's more work than they bargained for, because there's so many people out right now, and I think it's just gonna drop. I think there's still, of course, all the big people are still gonna be doing it, but I think that the majority of the people that are getting into it right now, 2 to 3 years, I think they're gonna slowly give up.
Just because of the work ethic.
Yeah, just because of the work.
Yeah, I will. I mean,
hard to say.
Yeah, every time we go out of state, arguably it's public, you know, but like I feel like you can find pockets of public that's like really pressured, and then you can find pockets that's, heck, we hunted for a week in Indiana and saw one guy.
One guy that had never seen another bow hunter.
And literally, we pull up next to this
truck.
Really? Yeah, we pull up next to this truck just to kind of talk to him and see what he saw, and he's like, "Hold on, I gotta call my wife." Tell her that I saw another bow hunter or something.
Yeah, he was almost scared.
That's hilarious.
Like it startled him. It was awesome.
Oh my gosh.
So next year, or I should say this year, any fun hunts planned or anything that you're really excited for?
I haven't even got through turkey season yet. I really haven't planned fallout. I always do Missouri, and I obviously will do Iowa. I technically have enough points to draw Wyoming elk, but I think I'm going to save that for like the next year, just because I really want to focus on some whitetail stuff. And I think what I'm going to do is this past year, aside from Iowa, like a lot of the states that I hit was like Kentucky, Kansas, and like some ones that were like kind of far. And I really didn't get the like preseason and like early season scouting that I really wanted to do. So I was kind of going in blind, just hoping to run into a buck. So I think this year I'm going to kind of stay close to home and just hunt like surrounding states around Iowa, just so I can like do some scouting ahead of time and hopefully get on a buck and then, go shoot them. Just because like, it's cool to, go hunt and everything, but at the end of the day, like I want to shoot something too. So just strategy wise, I'm gonna switch some things up, but I don't have anything for sure yet.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah, well, that's what we do. We try and hunt stuff that's close enough that we can drive out and
3-4 hours.
not take.
Well, you have so
Right.
much
Day.
invested with time off work, a tag, out of state tag, fuel to get there and stuff. I mean, you can't just be bouncing around
Yeah.
and winging it essentially.
Yeah.
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 It makes it tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Do you have anything to add before we wrap this up?
I don't think so. I think we covered pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have
Well-
anything. Let me check over my notes. Kev, you can take over.
let the listeners know where they can find you on social media and YouTube and stuff like that.
So my Instagram is just my name, Kaitlyn Maus. And then my like Facebook and YouTube, and I think maybe my TikTok is like Kaitlyn Maus Outdoors.
Okay.
So I mean, most of the pretty popular social platforms you'll be able to find me.
I do have one question for you before we actually close. Are you planning on doing anything like with the Go Wild app or like any of those, like the Rumble that just came out? Because I feel like as of late, we're getting censored with like the outdoor media stuff.
Oh my gosh, sorry, my stuff's falling.
No, you're all right. You're all right. I feel like we're getting censored, and I just was curious with the platform that you have. Are you looking to go towards that direction, or are you still going to stick with the main social medias at this point in time?
So, I mean, so I think I have a Rumble account, and I attempted to use it like a little bit, but I just don't think that platform has like the proper layout to really connect with people. I think it has potential though. And so like I would like to do something. I actually know there's a handful of channels on YouTube that got demonetized.
Yep.
And to the point of like they had to go up the ranks to like the VP of, I don't even know what it was, like monetization or something in YouTube.
Yep.
Just because they were like, what the heck? Like, we've been doing this how long? We didn't, we're following community guidelines. There's literally nothing wrong. I don't know if it was just like they hit a certain algorithm and then they just got flagged. But that has happened multiple times. And so it's kind of like one of those things where like, I don't want to just rely on like what we currently have. And like TikTok, for example, like you can't post anything.
No,
I've experimented and like I'll do like videos that are clean or whatever, and then I'll like do ones that appear clean, and I'll have literally like a millisecond of like me dragging deer or like a bloody knife or something, and it's like they take it down within seconds, and it's like really crazy. It's really interesting because it's like, wow, like okay, we can't get away with anything. So yeah, I don't want to just rely on those. I mean, I don't really know what the future is, but I think there are platforms that have potential like Rumble or whatever, but they're not quite there yet. But I think eventually it might have to go that way, just because it's like we might not be able to post on, the mainstream ones.
No, I honestly agree. Think of it like a couple of years back compared to now.
Oh yeah.
Like I don't the shorts and stuff on YouTube. I know that's like the big craze right now. If you pay attention to your shorts, like for the revenue portion, like if you show any like kill or like drawing back on a deer or something, like even YouTube's flagging all that stuff and you're not getting your monetization for it. So it's like, and like you said, TikTok's ridiculous. You can't even show a deer like in the camera with you at full draw, or they flag it. And then like we had a TikTok account for a little bit, our old one, and it actually got to the point where they flagged us 2 or 3 times, and it got to the point where we weren't even like in the algorithm, so we just deleted our TikTok and started over. And it's like, man, that if you had a big account that got like that, it's like, man, I don't know.
Yeah, I know, it's tough.
It's sad.
Yeah, it sucks. I have the doe that I shot in Missouri this year. They flagged me for my thumbnail because you could see the blood where I had hit her, like the entry hole. And they like flagged it, and like they were trying to demonetize it. And I'm like, seriously? Like for a little hole and a little bit of blood, like it wasn't gory,
Yeah.
But whatever. It is what it is.
And honestly, this is a problem. Like we as like the hunting community have to, like, I guess not the hunting community, but like social media that relies on hunting content, we got to figure something out because, like, I think you were talking about Seek One, like, and some of those other bigger guys, like that's their livelihood. And I'm sure, like, everybody, there's a lot of people out there that like that's what they live on, and it's like, at any given moment, just because someone disagrees with your opinion, they can just
Yes.
take away your salary, like
Yes.
that's what you make your living on. You pay for groceries, etc. It's like, how can somebody just be like, I don't like your content, so I'm gonna take away all your money?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like we got to do something. And I don't know what, but I sit here rambling. I'm not gonna do anything about it. But somebody out there that's listening, do something about it.
I don't have the brain. I don't have the brain power to make an app or anything, but I'll join it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same here.
Right, cool. All right,
So
Kev, you want to
Well-
wrap us up?
Yeah. So we have one final closing question for you, and that
Okay.
is, what have you learned from deer hunting that you can apply to everyday life?
oh, what have I learned from deer hunting?
Or just hunting in
Honestly-
general? Just hunting in
I-
general.
Yeah, honestly, I would say probably just persistence. Like kind of like what we were going with as far as like, you scout for a deer and it's like you gotta go after him, and and I think really being persistent is important, because if you give up, you're never going to succeed, where if you at least try, there's a chance. And I think I look at life that way, and I think it's kind of by chance that I'm like, obviously talking to you guys about deer hunting, but I also am a deer hunter who is now making my livelihood out of it. And it's kind of crazy because I never had a plan to do that. But once I started seeing that there was like the chance of doing it, I was like, okay, I really have to go for it. So I'm just the kind of person, like, if I have a goal or if I want to achieve something, I'm gonna do it. And so I think persistence has really helped me, just kind of make it in life and get where I want to be. So yeah, I would say that.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's
Yeah,
a good
that's-
one. I like it.
I like that.
That's awesome because usually everybody says patience. So
Patience.
persistence. That's a new one.
Yeah,
That's a new
yeah,
one.
yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, literally, like the last 8 guests have said patience. Not it's a bad thing.
yeah,
It's not a
right,
bad thing. It's
right.
just
Right.
it
Yeah.
just shows that, like, I mean, you do need to have patience when
Plus,
you hunt,
and not everybody's patient even.
Yeah,
in deer
and
hunting.
I'm not.
That's fair.
I know that for a fact.
Alrighty, well, we want to really thank you for coming on and telling your story about Swoops, and hopefully people come over to your social media pages, give you a follow, and also you have some really cool merchandise out too, so maybe they can
I do. Yeah.
on that. And,
Plug your merch.
yeah,
Okay, yeah. Gosh, I really wish I would have picked a different name, but my website is just like Kaitlyn Maus Outdoors .square.site, and then I obviously have my links like in my YouTube and stuff, so you can find it that way. But yeah, I got some merch stuff, and I really didn't even have a plan for that, but I had people that were like, I want to support you more than just watching your stuff, so I was like, okay, I'll come out with some stuff. So
Yeah,
that's
I'm
cool.
working on it and making
Yeah.
some new cool stuff. So
yeah,
Cool.
that's cool.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, yeah. Once again, thank you for coming on, and just I guess that's it. Thank you much.
Yeah, congrats on the
Yeah.
tank.
And congrats on
Thanks.
your absolute bulldozer of a deer.
yeah, I'll let you guys know how old he is when I get the results
Please,
back.
Yeah,
sure.
please do.
do.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
We would like to know.
Yeah.
Watch it come
Yes.
back. He's like 12 and a half or
Yeah,
I
something
know.
crazy.
Could you imagine?
That'd be awesome.
That'd be insane. Well, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
No
Yep,
problem.
it was good conversation.
Wrap it up,
Yes.
Kebby.
Alrighty, doesn't matter what you've done in the past, you can always be born again, and born again is out.
Peace.